alive and who's but that being said, I think, growing up, we thought life was extremely hard. And in some aspects, it really was, because a lot of us were left to our own devices and just a different way of parenting. Some parents figured it out. Most parents did the best they could and were coming with their own trauma and not getting what they needed growing up. So we've had these cycles that have continued, and the state of the world right now is in complete and utter chaos. And I mean, to use just the most, it's a shit show. And it's one of those that supporting kids right now, really looking at some different strategies, is really important. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't know if people are going to jump on or not. Like I said, I've got quite a few that signed up, but I also know several sent me messages saying, I really want the information, can't be there, so I'm going to rock and roll. That being said, those of you that are here live, and so for those of you that may not be able to be here live today, but are planning the next 2 days, I am carving out time that we can have some real time sort of heart seat coaching about some things with your style and your kids. So if you are here live, you will get to ask some specific questions, and we will do a little bit of a heart seat coaching around how your energies are at play and how you can support in that capacity. The other thing I will say is, for those of you that are live, I personally don't have a hard stop, so I will stick around and answer some additional questions for a while if you want to hang out and ask some questions about what we get into today, because the next 3 days are going to build upon each other. And I'm trying to isolate this into a way to introduce some of you to human design, but also those of you that have had some experience, give you the foundational pieces you need that then we can build upon. So that being said, let me share my screen, because I do have some slides to make this easy. Because if you do know me, I can get a little long-winded and I can get off track really easily, because there's just so much I want to talk about inside of this. And so when I look at parenting by design, when I look at how to structure creating supportive environments for your kids, I do this in a kind of two-prong capacity. One is really looking at it from a leadership capacity. I would say a three-prong capacity. One is really from a leadership lens. I believe all of us have capacity to lead in the gifts that we bring into the world, and that includes our children. Our children are bringing in new coding. They are bringing in a different blueprint, and they are the leaders that are going to open up access to higher emotional intelligence, to higher consciousness, to a lot of shifts. So they are coming wired with what is required as we undergo this change, which right now feels very tough and challenging. And it is cracking us open into a new level of evolution and a new level of humanity. The kids are coming in already with the codes that are aligned with that. So there's that piece. There's a leadership piece. There's also a piece around, especially as parents, we think a lot about legacy. And oftentimes legacy is a space that we believe it's what happens when we leave the earth, right? I want to set my kids up so that they're protected. I want to make sure that they have financial resources. What we don't realize is legacy happens in every moment. And so I'm going to kind of sound like the police song here for a minute, but it's every breath we take. Every breath we take, in every way we show up, and how we engage and how we interact is creating a living legacy. And to sort of steal from Brene Brown and paraphrase and make this my own, she talks about, you either do vulnerability or vulnerability does you. I'm going to say you either intentionally do your living legacy, or your living legacy will do you. And it will likely be, you're going to be like Steve Jobs laying on your deathbed with a shit ton of regret, because you realize that you didn't lean in and support the people or show up for the people that mattered most, because you were too busy building or doing something externally. The third piece is the fact that I really, really believe that relationships are the new currency. We are moving into a space where how we connect with humans in general, let alone our children, is imperative for us to be able to be in service, to be able to connect, to be able to create something that feels more expansive and allows us to rise in our capacities and what's available to us. And so when I say that, I look at parenting as a leadership model. And so looking at what we're going to do over the next 3 days, I thought for some of you that are showing up, and hello, I just saw someone else just jumped in. Christine, welcome as well. What I'd love for you guys to do is I'm kind of opening this conversation up. If you would in the chat, drop in, if you haven't, I'm going to drop this in here in case you didn't go or don't have access to yours. You can go get your chart and your kids' chart for free. But if you know your design, and what I'm looking for is the type, so it would either say like manifestor, generator, projector, manifesting generator, reflector, the fraction, so it'll be like 6235. If you can drop that in so that I know, especially when we get into kind of the heart seat space and do a little coaching, I know and can emphasize some things for those of you that are actually here live. We're going to go through all the types and the profiles, but I really want to make sure that those of you who are here, we get to address some of those questions specifically. So if you would drop in the chat your type and profile if you know it, and your kids if you know it, that would be helpful as we go along. I'm going to put that over there so that I can see. I'm going to move some things around so that I can see all of your faces, and I can see the chat, and I can see my notes. So that being said, for those of you that don't know me, whether here live or watching the replay later, just briefly, I'm Candy Barone. I am an executive advisor and leadership alchemist, and I'm a human design guide. I've been doing human design for about 8 years now, and I've really brought it into the leadership work that I do. I have more than 30 years in leadership development, in building high-performing conscious cultures. Over the last decade, I have advanced my study into family systems, relationship dynamics, into more psychology, sociology. And so I have really broadened the lens of what I focus on to be much more grounded in relational leadership. How we interact, how we engage, what are the energetic dynamics at play when 2 people are together, when 3 or more people come together, because there isn't a whole energetic blueprint that comes into play that oftentimes, and for those of you that in your businesses, you've gone through all the different trainings and all the different assessments, what they're missing oftentimes is the fundamental mechanics and energetics at play when 3 or more people come together. Because what happens is there's an entirely different energetic aura that comes to play that actually pushes on the system. And we're seeing this collectively, and we see this in our homes. We see this in our homes, which then we carry into our businesses and vice versa. And so just so y'all know, I am a 6/2 emotional manifesting generator, and we'll talk about that emotional piece tomorrow. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. And so thank you. We got some mixes in here. All right. We got a projector mom and a manifestor mom. Ooh, we're going to have a good conversation. Let's see. Manifesting generator, projector, kid, generator. Ooh, this is going to be very interesting to have a conversation. There's already some juice I can feel in that. And what I'm going to offer as we go through this. So over the next, I'm sorry, my 3 days. Actually, I don't want that yet. What I want to offer you or invite you in, especially for some of you that are projectors, I'm going to use that projector language of inviting you in. I'm going to invite you to approach the content we're going to go through over the next 3 days and the conversation in 2 capacities. One, I want you to look at how do I support my child, which is the whole premise of why we created this masterclass. But I also want you to look at it in terms of how you operate in your own wiring, because for many of you, especially if you are a projector mom or a manifestor mom, my guess is there is some wounding for sure. And I would say with any of the types on ways you may not have felt seen or supported growing up, simply because someone didn't know your energetic blueprint and know your design, that you are going to likely recognize. And so be gentle with yourself, because what happens when we get into some of this work is you can feel triggered, or you can feel like some of your wounding kind of gets opened up. That's on purpose, because the more you understand and have compassion for, my parents did the best they could, they didn't know what they didn't know, and I get to choose to be different. One of the things I want you to really think about is the best way you can support your kids is modeling your own healing and your own growth and evolution as well. And so if there are things that show up that you're like, oh, stay curious to ask yourself, ooh, is that an area I want to explore more for myself? Because in doing so, it will actually allow me to support my child at a higher capacity. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about the current reality. Like I said, we are heading into a new era, and I don't know if you follow any kind of astrology or follow any kind of ways that humanity and evolution work. Is when you look at, we go through cycles in humanity. We are closing out a specific cycle and era, and it's been very much kind of the industrial revolution. It's been very much a we culture, making everybody the same. It's the hustle and grind culture. It's been very much what's been at play for the last 250, 400 years, depending on what cycles you're looking at. We are, and we're actually in a 9-year this year, we are closing that out. February 2027, when we look at it through the lens of human design and astrology, we are actually on the precipice of a brand new energy for a next level of evolution that's coming in. And the biggest piece around it is it's moving us further away from the we energy and the survival and the scarcity energy, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. Right now, things are just blowing up. And going to eventually shift us into more of an individual leadership and a collective emotional intelligence energy. And so this is where our kids are really critical, because they truly are here to teach us and to show us what's possible for a new future. That being said, we also need to look at the, oh, Christine, thank you, generator and projector. Ooh, we got a lot of good mixes here. That being said, we need to look at the current reality of what's going on. I don't need to tell parents how much is going on in the world right now that puts your kids at risk, that is challenging your kids, that is affecting mental health. We're in, even National Suicide Prevention Month right now. The numbers are staggering, but they're not just staggering for kids, they're also staggering for you as parents. Every parent I've talked to, especially if you are also driving a business, you are leading in some capacity teams or work forward, you are trying to balance all the balls or juggle all the balls in the air. Parents are burnt out and exhausted because the demands keep increasing. The risk keeps increasing. And oftentimes you feel like no matter what you do, you're behind the 8 ball at every turn. How many of you feel like you can relate to that? Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit. When we look at the numbers, 41% of parents say they are so stressed that actually functioning is becoming a challenge. Nearly 1 in 2 parents feel like they're overwhelmed. ADHD, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit without getting into it too deep. I will say, especially when you start to understand individual energetic blueprints, there's a lot of misdiagnosis in ADHD, neurodivergent, spectrum, or how it's diagnosed is not diagnosed in the right way. Because oftentimes it's a label that's being slapped on when we don't understand why a child has behavioral issues or why they're restless or why they seem to have all this energy. And oftentimes it's a space of, we don't know how they are innately wired. When we understand that, that becomes a completely different lens. And so, yes, Melissa. And so I love this, that you're coming in. So I love that we've got a balance as well. Allie, you talked about, you've got a middle school age child and a high school age child. Christine, I'm curious what age yours are. what age your daughter is, because Melissa's coming in with very young kids who are still in their formative years, their development years, because our kids are taking in programming and conditioning and starting to walk into their identity through early childhood up to about age 5, 7, 9, where then they start to really get kind of dialed into their identity and their wiring. So some of this is going to be more of a, ooh, I get to look at some proactive strategies as I'm raising my kids and what to put in place, knowing how they're wired, versus while my kids have gone through those formative years, they have some imprinting, right, wrong, or indifferent. We all have imprinting and conditioning and program. How do I address where they're currently at and offer support that lets them feel more seen and heard and supported with where they're at right now? And so, Christine, I have 3 daughters, actually referring to as 5, the other 2, 3, and 2. Okay, so we've got one kid right there in that sort of like really bringing that development phase kind of to fruition, and some others in the formative stage. So take from this what is going to be relevant for you based on where you're at in the age of your kids. Okay. The US Surgeon General has recently flagged that parental stress is actually a mental health and workforce issue. This is an epidemic we're facing right now because burnout is real. I'm tired of just saying So I also want you to realize, because I always like to turn this in, one of my missions is to really bridge the intersection between family systems and dynamics and building conscious cultures and communities, because we live in a society that keeps saying it's work-life balance. That is the biggest bunch of bullshit ever. You have a life. Work is one of those spokes on the wheel. Your kids are one of those spokes on the wheel. It all is happening at the same time. There is no division or separation. And whatever is happening in your home gets transferred into how you show up for your teams, your work, your clients, and vice versa. So when we look at what's going on right now, 300 billion, that is a B, capital B, annually, is lost in productivity, absenteeism, and turnover, because we are not getting into where the root of stress is starting from, and because we are not looking at people in business as a whole person. We're like, well, this is your work personality. This is you at work. We don't care about what's going on at home. And that is a big missed opportunity, because business, we also get told, how many of you have heard this? It's business, it's not personal. I want to dispel that myth right now. Business is about as personal as it gets. It's human to human interaction. I will also say, and regardless of what you believe, business is spiritual. It is, for most people, the way you put your gifts in service to others. Therefore, it is extremely personal, because your spiritual walk is about as personal as it gets. So when you understand that, you can see that there isn't a separation. You see that it all plays into the same space and it all matters. Because I will also tell you, there are things that you're going to see for your kids that are going to be transferable to how you're working with your teams and your clients as well. Even if you don't know their type, you're going to be able to pick up on some things that say, I wonder if maybe I approach it this way instead. Makes sense? Okay, so the last piece I just want to say about that, oops. Oh, so that was the last piece I wanted to say about that. So over the next 3 days, today we're going to talk more about learning styles, homework, and play based on type and based on profile. We're only going to look at 2 factors in the chart. There are over 1,000 markers in human design. We're going to look at 2 and we're going to look at 2 at a very high level, and we're going to keep it in the context of these 3 things. Tomorrow, then, we're going to add another layer and look at how your kid takes in energy. So we're going to look at where they're defined, and I'll talk about that more tomorrow, and where they're open and what that means for their type, and how you set them up for success in the morning and the evening. Okay, because really important. And if you've got multiple kids, bedtime doesn't look the same for all your kids. morning routines. And I know for parents, the biggest resistance is, oh my God, I don't have space to manage 3 different routines in the morning. There are little tweaks you can do to set you up for success, but also set your kids up for success. And I'm going to offer that you stay curious. And it's not about implementing all these strategies at once. It's about looking at the one that really resonates with you to say, I'm going to try that first. This is a space of exploration. It's a space of experimentation. It's a space to test, refine, and integrate. It is not a one size fits all. Okay. Even if you're a specific type, it's not a one size fits all. Makes sense? And then what we're going to talk about on day 3 is extracurricular activities and weekends. Some of you don't realize your kids are burning out because the way they're managing extracurricular activities or that play. And so for those of you that have the youngins that are still in that sort of formative stage, there are some things I want you to consider even in their activities, because this still might be showing up with where they get cranky or where they start throwing temper tantrums or where they start like seeming like they're not really in some good energy. Oftentimes it's the way they're moving through some of these additional activities and their weekends. And for some of you that are manifestors and projectors, you're going to feel this for yourself as well. So human design, just really simple. It is a tool. It is an energetic blueprint. It is a snapshot in time of birth, date of birth, location of birth. It is not an assessment. It is not an end all be all. And while human design can give us access to a lot of understanding and insight, there are multiple things that factor. So this is oftentimes why I do deep one-on-one work with people. And we'll talk about that also on day 3. I do deep one-on-one work with parents, their kids, and their whole family system, because there are multiple nuances and multiple dynamics at play. Human design is a tool that allows us to have access to the energetic blueprint for you, for your kids, and for your whole family system. Human design doesn't tell you who your kid is. It doesn't tell you what they're here to do. There are things that you can extract from that. It essentially is a tool that shows you how. So I want you to imagine as if you and your children are a prototype and you need an operating manual to know how best to operate that prototype. So if you're a gas fuel car, but your child is an electric car, you need to know that you are a gas fuel car so that you can actually fuel yourself with what you need. And if your kid is electric, you need to know to plug them in. Right? So it's all the hows. It's how they make decisions. It's how they nourish themselves. It's how they sleep. It's how they interact with the world and others. It's all the hows. It's not the what, and it's not the who. Okay, so I just want to lay that down because a lot of people have a misunderstanding around human design and they think it's another personality assessment or they think it's who you are. No, we have free will. We get to decide who we are at any point. It is how you are. It is how you take in energy and how you put energy in the world at the most basic level. How many of you, especially being parents, how many of you have seen the Pixar movie Soul with Jamie Foxx? Anybody see that movie? Okay, great movie. Yeah, that agency. So what happens, you remember the scene for Allie, if you've seen it, Christina, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a scene where Jamie, he's like, I want to be a jazz musician. And he signs his soul contract in the air and then he waits in line and then the portal opens and he gets to be the jazz musician, right? That's the whole premise of the movie. That's human design. You essentially have a design date on your chart. That's kind of the moment you signed your soul contract. And then what happens is there's 88 astrological degrees where you're waiting for the right portal, being your parents and your kids being through you, for that energy to align with that soul contract so that you can come in as the jazz musician. That's the most basic way I can explain human design. The complicated way is it's the movie Soul, it's the movie Inside Out, it's the entire Matrix series, it's the movie Interstellar, it's the Kung Fu Panda 2, Kung Fu Panda 3, little bit of the Neverending Story, and the movie The Shift with Wayne Dyer, all playing at the same time, yet somehow it just makes sense. That's what human design really is if you really dig into the layers. But on a simple level, it's the movie Soul. What we're going to dig into for the strategies today, like I said, are two pieces. It is your type, which is your energetic signature or aura. There's 5 of them. The role, so it's, are you a jazz musician or are you a bus driver, kind of energy, again, without saying who you are. It's the role or the overarching archetype. The profile then is more of the flavor of that archetype. So there are little nuances that say, okay, if I'm a jazz musician, am I going to play like old 70s style jazz or am I playing modern jazz? Kind of like if you were to look at, okay, you're a jazz musician, but what kind of like genre are you playing jazz in? That's what we're going to look at, because when those two pieces to come together, there are some specific things that are going to help you show up for yourself and for your kids, specific to just those two things that could be game changers. Okay. So that being said, for those of you, when you look at the chart and you already put it in here, so you all have found it, your type is the one that says type here, and your profile is the one that looks like the fraction. These are the two things I'm going to highlight today. And most of what we're going to talk about is the type. And then I'm going to give you sort of and now add this flavor on, and here's some ways. And we're, like I said, we're going to build upon this the next 2 days. So don't worry if you don't quite get it. Also, there's a replay. You can go back and take a look at this. Okay. So that being said, real quickly, there are 5 human design types. There are manifestors, which are about 8-9% of the population. There are generators, which are the most prevalent, 37% of the population. Manifesting generators, who are essentially a generator, but also have manifestor qualities. So they get to be a little bit complex, 33%. So when you look at the generator types combined, because they are a generator first, 70% of the population is a generator type. This matters for those of you that are either manifestors, projectors, have projector children. I don't see anybody with reflectors, but it also matters to them too. Reflectors are about 1 to 2% of the population. Why this matters is because we can classify it into 2 groups, sacral types and non-sacral types, meaning generators, and I'll show you more of this tomorrow. Generator types have what's known as a defined sacral. They have consistent access to work and life force energy, meaning in easy translation, they are the workers of the world. They are the ones that get into, like, they can hustle and move, and our world has been built by generators who are also out of alignment. But that's a lot of where that hustle, move, get things done kind of energy comes from, because when they're aligned, they're constantly just. Those that are non-sacral types, projectors, manifestors, and reflectors, you do not have a defined sacral, meaning you don't have consistent access to that same energy. You work very differently than that other group, and the world was not designed for you. And it's not designed for your kids right now. And so those of you that are manifestors and projectors or have any of that energy, listen up, because there are some things that can be game changers for supporting you and your kids in a system and in a world that wasn't designed for you. Okay. So when we look at that, what we're going to do is I'm going to break down each type, and we're going to look at 4 things for that type: energy, learning style, homework, and play. The biggest thing you need to know about manifestors, and Allie, I'm curious if you felt this growing up. First of all, my guess is you felt like you never fit into any kind of box. Like, you just didn't fit in. I'm not even gonna say box. Like, there was just a space with friends, with school, with, like, you always felt like you were an alien of some sort that just didn't fit in. And I see you shaking your head, yes. Manifestors, really, this is one of the biggest things you need to know. If you have a child that's a manifestor, and if they're a manifesting generator, they experience this too, but a little bit differently. If you have a child that's a manifestor, they are constantly at odds with not feeling like they belong. with not feeling like they fit in, and in a culture that keeps insisting they're supposed to look like someone else, they're supposed to act like someone else, they're supposed to think like someone else. There can be a lot of shame your kid picks up around something's wrong with me versus I'm here to be something different. Manifestor kids, manifestor energy are here to create things that have never been done. They are here to initiate and inform. What happens is they have direct access to source. They have an internal like download inspiration that comes through that all of a sudden they get this idea to create something. Where they get stuck is they've got a culture that one doesn't like some of their ideas because their ideas are big and they're crazy and they're disruptive. So having a manifestor child can be very challenging because it's really hard to discipline a child in a manifestor child in traditional ways. Because one, they do not do well with rules of any kind. They're not here to be told what to do. They're actually here to blaze a path, which can be very challenging when you have a child who's young, who's a manifestor, who one doesn't know how to articulate, because manifestors also struggle when they get those ideas to articulate those ideas. Oftentimes they just want to get into creating and they forget to let other people know that they're about to be a tornado and tear. And so I'm going to put this in a really big analogy for you when you think about manifestors. Anybody ever see the original Mary Poppins with Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke? Okay, one of my favorite movies. Manifesting generators, this also applies to these kids as well. Do you remember Admiral Boone on top of the bank's house that had the cannon in Mary Poppins, that at like 6 o'clock every night, he would shoot that cannon off and the family knew, oh, 6 o'clock, brace yourselves because the piano is about to go flying and the shit's flying off the walls and like all the things. That's essentially what happens when a manifestor creates, is like, holy crap, it can feel like total chaos because oftentimes they forget to let people know it's 6 o'clock and they're about to shoot off the cannon. So they shoot off the cannon and shit goes flying. For example, manifestor parent, Allie, you're going to get an inspiration to rearrange furniture, but if you forget to tell your family that you rearranged the living room, they're going to go in and sit on a couch that's no longer there, which then means people can get very angry with a manifestor. And I also want you to know that your manifestor child can have a lot of anger, or it can feel like a lot of anger. It's actually not anger. When they display anger, it's often because they were disrupted in that creative flow. When your child, this is especially important when it comes to homework for you, when your child finally gets to settle down and is in their work, do not by any means interrupt them unless it's flood, blood, or fire. Because when you interrupt a manifestor or a manifesting generator, because again, manifesting generator is a generator who then acts like a manifestor, what will happen is if you pull them out of their flow, they oftentimes can't get back in it. So for example, if they're doing homework and you're like, yeah, but dinner is going to be ready. You need to ideally, I would recommend you let your child finish your homework and save their food for afterwards, rather than interrupt them because you insist they have to eat at the same time. Because when a manifestor gets in their flow, it lasts for a period, then it stops, and then they need to take a rest. Allie, would you say that's true? Would you say that would have been different for you as a child had your parents given you more access to stay in flow versus trying to force you into the rhythms of the family at different times?
Yeah, that would have made a huge difference.
Yeah. So what I want you to also realize is I'm putting up the whole slide at one time because I'm not going to go through every piece. First of all, you're going to have the replay. You can go through this. I want you to see what's relevant. I want to give you more context around each of those, like I just did with the manifestor. Is that fair versus me going through and reading every bullet on here? I broke this down, 3 bullets under each one so that you understand. But the biggest thing I want to tell you about a manifestor is they need to inform, they really supporting them and learning how to inform before they initiate so that they don't piss everybody off or create unnecessary chaos or disrupt. They can let people know I'm about to disrupt. I tell people when I'm about to go, I've had people stay with me and I will be like, do not interrupt me when I'm in flow. Text me. My phone's here. When I see it, great. If you need to ask me a question or you're leaving or whatever. And when I know I'm going to do something, I let people know because then they have 3 choices. One, they can support me. So example is, especially as your manifestor kids grow, when they're like, I really need to go deep on this project for school, you're like, great. Would you like me to make you dinner and put it by the door? Or would you like me to make you dinner and have it ready for you when you're done? So that you can then take some of that mundane stuff off their plate to support them for being in that flow. The other thing is when they're getting really wound up in one of their ideas, it might be the time that the other kids in the house go outside and play because it's going to be disruptive to their study or the way that they're doing things. So again, creating space. Your manifestor really is going to struggle with fitting in, with a need for freedom and autonomy, and for a lot of alone time and rest. If you are plugging in a manifestor to all the family activities, don't be surprised if you have a child that has a lot of anger, you have a child that's very cranky, you have a child that seems very resistant. They're not wired that way. So where they can have escape away from all of the family activities that are going a mile a minute and can have that space to be alone, the better. Okay? Does that make sense for everybody? That's a manifestor child. Generators, and I'm going to say this a little bit flippantly, and then I'm going to say it also depends. The answer is always, it depends when you look at all the other nuances in the chart. By default, and in the larger context that we're talking about, generator children are the easiest children to raise. Because we live in a generator world, and when you figure out your generator child's rhythm, it is the same rhythm every day that just kind of plugs away, that they just, once they got a switch that goes on in the morning and a switch that goes off at night, and they just are like little Energizer bunnies that hum, 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 hum. And if your generator child is really tapped into what brings them joy, your generator child can do their work, they can get it done, you're working in their rhythm, they can be extremely easy compared to what we feel from the other types. Again, because of our conditioning and the way our culture's built, they fit the mold, more to speak. Now, again, that is a very broad, generic statement. It also depends on what else is going on in their blueprint. But their whole thing is they are here to actually learn. The one thing to keep in mind for your child when it comes to their learning style and homework is both the generator and the manifesting generator child have this. They have what's known as a stair-step learning curve, which means they will have deep access and like a blast of mastery in what they're doing. And then they're going to hit a freaking wall and they're going to plateau. This happens in all of their learning curves. This is very natural. But what happens is they will get extremely frustrated. They will get frustrated and want to quit. One of the biggest ways you can support generator or manifesting generator child is to check in with them to see, is it really time to quit? Or do they need to go do something else to get their creative juices going in order to get back to studying or work or whatever it is they're doing? Because what happens is oftentimes that frustration is like, oh my God, I can't do this. And you'll hear generator kids say, I'm stupid. I can't do this. I can't figure it out. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. What they don't realize is that plateau is a space for them to actually go, oh, let me do some inventory of what I just learned. It's an integration period. It's a buildup of momentum period. For adults, a lot of times I tell people it's the 80-20 rule. It's the, how do I drop 80% of what got me here off, keep the 20 that I still need, and now look at what skills, what things, what do I need to get me ready for the next blast of mastery. What happens though is generator kids, if they don't learn how to manage that frustration and understand that that frustration is a signal, they quit before they even get it. It's like the image of the gold digger. Right before he gets to gold, because something gets hard, they quit and they give up. Coaching and supporting your child to navigate that frustration as not something that they should be mad at, they should be shamed by, but it oftentimes indicates they need a break. So what I mean by that is generator kids, by the way, you will see I'm moving around like crazy. I'm a Manny Gen. I have a lot of power too. I have a really interesting, this is also important, especially for Manny Gens, but for generators, I have all kinds of things that move energy for me. Also, another reason why generator or manifesting generator kids get squirrely is because they're not moving their bodies enough. Traditional school has kids sitting all day long. And I will tell you that when your generator or Manny Gen comes home, the first thing they need to do is go run around the block a few times. Do not have them come home and do their homework right away. I guarantee if you have challenges with your kid hunkering down to do something and they are a generator type, it's because they have not moved their body enough. A generator and manifesting generator need to burn off physical and mental energy daily. They get it's like a generator. It goes on, they need to burn the generator out, turn it off so it can restore, turn it back on, turn it off, but they need to, and this is especially important for Manny Gens who have a lot of definition in their chart. Oftentimes, if your kid is struggling to sleep at night and they're a generator, or they can't get calmed down to go to sleep, they did not move their body enough. More times than not, if you have any behavioral issues with a generator child, the first course of action is, how much activity have they gotten today? And I remember I got really wound up at my grandfather's funeral. I was really emotional. My mom made me walk around. It was a mile block. My grandparents, she's like, go take a walk around the block. I came home and I was still like, she's like, go take a walk 7 times. I went around that block. That was a long day. And finally I came home and I was exhausted. She's like, you good? I'm like, I was tired. But I needed to find a way to burn off that energy because I was about to create a whole scene that was not going to be helpful. Most of the time, your kids, if they're a generator type, especially if they're a manifesting generator, are not getting enough activity. It's really important, and I cannot recommend this enough, that when your kid comes home from school, that they don't plop down in front of a device, they don't plop down in front of a TV, and they don't go straight to their homework. They actually do something that physically moves their energy. Really important for your generator if you want them to be able to create deeper learning and really focus on their homework. And once they do, then they can just get it done and it's fine. But creating that ritual and that routine where they're moving their body is key. I will also say, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, if your kids that are generator types can get some movement in the morning, even if it's doing like 100 jumping jacks by their bed, would also be highly advantageous, because if they can burn off some of that energy immediately, it doesn't get stored in their body and isn't ricocheting around. Okay. So if we look at the manifesting generator, again, combination of generator, manifesting generator, the biggest addition that I would say for the Mana-Gen is twofold. So they have the learning style like the generator. It's that stair step. They need to burn off energy. But the other thing I want you to realize is Mana-Gens, the struggle that a manifesting generator has is being told their whole life they're too much. because they have a lot of energy, and they are the only type that is truly here to multitask, be a multi-potentialite. They need multiple things going on at once. The worst thing you can do to support a Manny Gen is tell them to focus on one thing, tell them to niche down on one whatever. They actually, when I work, I oftentimes have a podcast going with a baseball game going with 57 tabs open with, because I've got to have places for that excess energy to go so that I can actually focus on the thing that needs my attention. If your Manny Gen is restless, you might need to consider, if they don't have the option at school, that's one thing. But like me, I have a standing desk. I have a mat that has all kinds of things that I can play with. I have fidget tools. This is the kid that needs fidget spinners. This is the kid that needs, I used to do this in meetings, find them something that's quieter. People don't like when you click the pen. I'm always moving. And a lot of people are like, can you just sit still? No, I actually can't. Watching a movie for me and just sitting is actually kind of torture sometimes. I will watch a movie with my mom and wash dishes, or I'll be on my computer, or I'll be doing. Manny Gens need to be doing multiple things at once because their energy gets so big, they've got to have a way for it to go somewhere. Yeah, man, she stood as a toddler tower eating meals. And so Melissa, I love that. I love that she was already doing. I eat so many of my meals standing up, oftentimes in tree pose, because I just sit. I actually don't digest well sometimes when I'm sitting. I don't do well sitting. And my whole life, I got told I was too much. I'm too restless. I have ADHD. I will tell you, this is one of the biggest areas where there's a misdiagnosis of ADHD has your child been diagnosed as ADHD? And then you look and you're like, my child's a Manny Gen. Your child's being diagnosed as ADHD because they can't sit still and they have an attention span of a gnat. That is not ADHD. That is their wiring. That is how they operate. The other thing that's really important for a Manny Gen, and I still struggle with this being a Manny Gen, they will make mistakes and skip steps, and it's nothing they did wrong. It is part of their learning curve. If you think about the fable of the tortoise and the hare, the generator is the tortoise. Chug, 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 chug. The Manny Gen is the hare. Oh shit, I missed 27 steps. Here's why they miss steps. Because oftentimes they're here to collapse time or compress the cycles of how we do things. So what they do is they blow past everything and then they're like, oh shit, I just missed 20 steps. But then they go, wait a minute, why is there 20 steps? That's stupid. We only need 4. And they will show you how to condense those learning cycles. Now, in school, this can be problematic because when a math teacher says you didn't show all the steps, and especially when you see in just a moment, if they're a line 2 as well, like me, who has an innate knowing, then I'm like, I just know this is the answer and I can show it to you in 2 steps. I got forever punished because I didn't do it the right way. So this is something to be very cognizant about with a manifesting generator child. They move freaking fast. They're going to skip a shit ton of steps. They don't sit still. And they need somebody that understands and can be their advocate, that is exactly how they're designed. And they are also a generator first and then a manifesting generator energy. So again, you can see the nuances between the different types, right? And can you see this showing up for yourself and in your kids? Yeah. My middle daughter is a Manny Gen, and yes, she doesn't stop moving, right? So give them access to move. I used to have a treadmill under my desk too. Sometimes I work on my bike. Like I have a vibration plate. Like I'll take calls sometimes and then I'm like, because I just, it's usually with people that know me well enough, but it's that space of letting them. Also, the other thing to know with the Manny Gen, and this is going to depend on their chart more, they might have switches. A Manny Gen is usually, especially if they have a defined root, is on or off. There's no in between. I am either all on and lit up and like, holy crap, can light up 4 cities, or I am like, can't do anything and moving through quicksand. This can be problematic when it comes to homework in school, because when it can be torture to try to get a Manny Gen to take action on something when their switches are off. And so you're going to have to find some ways to support them through that. And it might be go burn some energy, go run outside, go do a creative project, go cook in the kitchen, go paint, go play, go do something so that then they can get that kind of juice going again and can come back and focus on the activity at hand. And again, traditional school doesn't always give them that option, right? And I am getting long-winded, so I apologize because I'm going to go over. Projectors. So we got some projector moms and we got some projector kids on this call in particular. Projectors, I'm just going to say, first of all, I have a secret soft spot for projectors in my heart for a couple of reasons. One, because this world, out of all the types, this world is least designed for you. 100%. It is least designed for projectors. You also are the visionaries and the leaders who are here to direct us into the next evolution. And if you've got a projector child, holy cow, are they coming in with some magic? But they are also coming in a place where people don't understand them, because the biggest thing you need to remember with projector energy is they need to be recognized and invited in. They need to be called out for the fact that they can see things. And when I say they can see things, you first of all, you're holding the energy template of the world. You hold and see the potential for what's possible. Not only for people in your immediate, for your kids, for your family, for the people you interact with, but for the world. And so projectors, especially if you have a lot of openness, and like I said, we'll talk about this tomorrow, projectors, you can get burnt out faster than anybody, because what happens is you are constantly taking in the energy of the world. And oftentimes you are in spaces where people are not recognizing or inviting you in. So when you do share that wisdom, because you're the seers, the oracles, you've got the crystal ball, like you see the whole picture. You're going to see things that generator types never will see, because ideally projectors are here to shine your light and crack open the generator type so that they work more efficiently and they actually activate their gifts and their highest potential. That being said, especially some of you that got a 5 line in your profile, you provoke people, because you walk in a room and it's like you put up a projection screen. It's like, here's the movie of your life, and let me show you why you're not living your potential. And you do that whether you want to or not. And so I will tell you, one of the biggest struggles is projector and manifesting generator energy, because manifestors too, but manifestor generators in particular with projectors hate to be told what to do. And when a projector's like, let me show you what I see and let me tell you and give you advice, there can be this resistance. When a Manny Gen knows they're with a projector and remembers and says, oh, wait, you know stuff. Crack me open and show me what you see. And that invitation is open. That relationship is one of the most symbiotic, delicious, magical relationships possible, because there's this juice that projectors will see things that like I said, the generator types can't. And there's this really interesting dynamic between projectors and Manny Gens in particular, where it can be really just fire. So if you got a kid that's a Manny Gen and you got another kid that's a projector and wonder why they're always at odds, there's some learning around how they talk to each other and communicate. Your generator needs some yes, no questions. Your Manny Gen generator, whatever. And your projector needs to be invited in and then asked open-ended questions. By the way, the sacral types do very well. If you're trying to get your kid to make a decision, if you have a generator or Manny Gen, yes, no, break it down into basic baby step. Do you want spaghetti for dinner? Do you want blah, blah, blah? Like literally basic yes, no questions all the way. You do not do that with a manifestor, projector, or reflector. You ask open-ended questions or open-ended statement. I'm curious how you feel about spaghetti for dinner tonight. I'm curious what it would be like to do X, Y, and Z. Tell me your thoughts on blah, 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 blah. That alone can be a game changer in how you talk to your kids, because your generators need their sacral to get lit up. Your non-sacrals have a whole internal kind of dialogue and often need spaces. So your projector kid is going to need space to talk through without you necessarily telling them the answer. You're just guiding them with open statements so that they can arrive at their truth. When it comes to learning and homework, and again, they don't necessarily get this option at school, but when it comes to homework, your projector child will do best to work in small batches of time, no more than 2 or 3 hours at a time, and on one thing where they can knock that out, get it done, and then likely they need some kind of rest. It either needs to be to go take a nice walk, maybe go out in nature, actually take a nap. Your projectors are going to need a lot of rest. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow with the morning and evening routine. And we're going to talk about it with the weekend and the extracurricular activities, because I'm going to tell you, if you are a projector parent or you have a projector child or both, you and they need more rest than you are probably getting. Projectors get depleted in their resources quickly because they try to operate like a generator, especially if they have a lot of openness because they're picking up that energy. Projectors have their own rhythm. Rest, what is rest? Sign projector, right? Yeah, I feel that. And I hear that from my projectors. And we're going to even talk about pajama days for projectors tomorrow, especially if your kids are doing a lot of activities. They need, honestly, a dedicated day where they are allowed to just be in their pajamas, not have to do housework, not have to do different things. And I know sometimes this isn't always ideal in a family system, and where you can make those changes. A projector can actually be tired binging Netflix, and someone can be like, oh, you're so lazy. How can you be tired? You're just laying around. Because they're picking up the freaking energetic template of the world. Your child, a projector child, needs Netflix binges. They need couch time. They need to just be able to. And we're going to talk about some rituals, because when it comes to morning and bedtimes for a projector are more important than even the morning. And everybody else, I would say the morning is more important. But your projectors in particular really need to be mindful of their evening. Otherwise, they start their mornings already exhausted. But your projector is picking up a lot of energy. And the best way you can support your child is understanding that they're going to have a different way they learn. They also, more times than not, a projector is a systems thinker. They struggle sometimes to get down to all of the, this is so accurate for my son. I love that. So struggle to get into the minutia details. They also are going to struggle, especially if they've got some of the other markers, when someone's like, show me your work. And they're going to be like, but I just know, because they just see it. Giving these kids freedom and room to understand their rhythm and understand how they learn. And so then the last one, even though I don't have anybody on here, I do want to share this for those that are going to catch this later, is the reflectors. The reflectors are really interesting because they have no definition in their chart when it comes to the centers, the big pieces in there. They are actually here to mirror back the health of a family unit, of a community, so your reflector, the biggest thing you need to be mindful about if you have reflector energy in your family is that they can become easily enmeshed in other people's stories, other people's dramas. They can become a caretaker. They also are, now projectors can be as well if they have a lot of openness. Reflectors can be the children that have the autoimmune diseases. Reflectors, I have, believe it or not, with only 2% of the population, I know like 12 projectors or reflectors, and I've had many clients, every single one of them has some kind of autoimmune disease because they are reflecting the health of the world and they carry it in their bodies. Their energy is really different. The other big thing that you're going to need to know about your child is they are very slow to make decisions. Ideally, they need at least a lunar cycle, 28 to 29 days, to make big decisions. So when they get ready to go to college, if you got a reflector kid, it's not a, where do you want to go to college? And boom, it's a, holy crap, we probably need to be talking about this for 3 months. And you need to give them space where you are fully present and they can just talk and they can just talk and they can just talk and they can just assess and integrate and think through and decide and come back to. And they need, we do not have a culture that says we get to be slow in making decisions. If you've got a reflector child, the best way you can support them is to give them spaces where they can talk and let them have as much time as possible to make big decisions and know that they're picking up everyone's energy, that they need to break out of people's auras so that they can learn what energy is theirs and not get enmeshed in everyone's story in the family. Okay. These are also ones, though, that can have more energy than anybody, because when they pick it up and they're aligned and they figure it out, they can go. I got it. But when they're done, they are also going to be like hiding away and sleeping, and like they have bursts, but they can have a ton of energy based on what they pick up. So just a couple things for the 5 types. Then the layer that I want to throw on here is the profile lines. In your profile, there are 2 numbers. There is a first number and a second number. It looks like a fraction. I'm not going to get into all the nuances of what it means if it's the first number or the second. Doesn't matter for this conversation right now. What matters is that flavor of each line shows up in your child. So for example, I'm a 6-2 manifesting generator, which means I carry this energy of the 6. I also carry the energy of the 2. So what I want you to know is if your child has a line 1, regardless of what type they are, you also need to realize this is a child that needs a lot of information. They will not feel safe making a decision until they have a lot of data. They are going to be your why child all day long. Well, why are we doing that? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? How do we know this is going to work? They're looking for patterns, they're looking for information, and they're looking for data. They need a foundation of knowledge. They also are the child that can get most paralyzed in analysis paralysis. Let me just research one more thing. Oh my God, we're so done with the resource portion of this program. Make a decision, any decision. Getting them to take action can be difficult sometimes. So if you have, say, for example, a projector with a 1 line, you have a child who has all that energy of the projector that you need to consider. And then you need to realize, wait, this is a kid that really needs to have a baseline of information. So I can't just likely, if you're a manifesting generator, for example, spring something on your projector and expect them to get on board without taking the time to tell them why. And for a manifesting generator, let me tell you how painful that is. Patience and slowing down are not a manifestor or manifesting generator strong suit. So if you're a manifestor with a projector child, same thing. If you're like, oh, we're going to do this, I got this idea, and your projector child's got a 1, and you're like, they're taking in this energy, know that you may need to slow down and explain to them a little bit why, which can be sort of a painful process because it's not natural to how you communicate. Do you see how that shows up? If you're line 2, the biggest thing I cannot stress for you, and this is so important, I don't care, and even Melissa and Christine for the babies, if you got a line 2 in your kid, they need alone time. They are the kid that wants to lock themselves in their room and read a book and not be interrupted. They are the child that's going to need to pull out of other people's auras. I believe to my core, and it's probably because I'm a line two. Line twos were the one that created the man cave and the she shed. Like, oh my, they can be around animals, but they actually need to get out of other people's aura. My daughter has just started doing that, reading books by herself in her room. Haha, she's a 5'2". Exactly. Two lines. I always say if a two had a mantra, it would be, I really hate people, but God, I need people because they're the ones that see my gift and call me out. Your line two is also not going to see their innate genius. These are your kids that they see things, they know things, and they can't explain why. Another way that you could support a line two is by recognizing when they know, trusting that they know, and not demanding they prove to you how. It can be very debilitating for a line two when you keep going, well, how do you know that, and prove it to me? Because the thing is, they won't know how they know. They are highly intuitive. They're old souls. Your two lines are your old souls. They're the ones that are like, you're like, I swear my 4-year-old's like a 40-year-old. They just have an old soul way of seeing things, and they're bringing in wisdom from like generations. People tell me that all the time. She has an old soul. Line two's old soul all day long. And oftentimes feel like something's wrong because they can't explain how they know what they know. Teaching them to trust that instead of feeling like something's wrong with them is a huge way to support them. Your line threes, especially if you have a manifesting generator or a manifester and you have a line three or a line six, because as a child, this matters for all of you. Basically, the line six before age 28 is an amplified line three. So line sixes listen up as well. Line threes, if you are a manifestor, especially manifesting generator, because you're already going to make mistakes. Line three, I need you to understand that child's superpower is failing, and failing a lot, and like blowing shit up. They are the one that's going to like experiment in the kitchen and make a huge ass mess and like set things on fire and like blow things up. And the last thing you want to do is shut them down. They learn through trial and error. They learn through what doesn't work to know what. Thomas Edison was a 3-5. He was asked, what did it feel like when you didn't figure out that when you failed 10,000 times? And like, he goes, I didn't fail 10,000 times. It was just 10,000 ways it didn't work. Because inside of that is magic. Like they literally they're your kids that are also going to walk in the house and be covered in God knows what, because they got to get their hands on it. I remember my mom, I'm a 6 line, so amplified 3. My mom would be like, wash your hands for dinner. So I'd wash my hands. Show me your hands. Then she'd like turn them over. And I'd get very upset because I'm like, I don't eat with that side of my hands. Like it was pride on the layers of dirt I had on me. I was the last one to get in the bath. The ring in it was gross. It's probably why I don't like baths now, because it just reminds me of sitting in my own filth. But your 3 line, they're messy. They're gonna fail. They are in a laboratory. They are the epitome of being in the arena 24/7. They literally are not the kid that you can say, don't touch the stove. They're going to be like you can't tell this child how to do something. You're going to need to watch them painfully scrape their knee, cut themselves, burn themselves, light themselves on fire. See, Allie, 100%, right? Like, and by the time they're about 28 years old, they're going to look at their friends and go, dude, have you even lived a life? Because they're going to have so much life that when they get to be 52 like me, and people are like, Candy, tell me your story. I'm like, what story do you want? I got 20 from 5 minutes ago. Like the amount of things their experiences, the one difference for a 6 line is a lot of times 6 lines could also have some trauma. They have really hard, like I said, they're an amplified 3. So sometimes their experiences can be, because they're here to be role models in life, and they're here to get really wise about these traumatic, sometimes defining moment kind of experiences. A 3 line's just blowing shit up all the time. A 6 line will do that, and sometimes can have some really hard, almost adult like experiences. They have a hard time handling as a kid. If they're a 6-2, this could be extra because you got an old soul who's always thinking that they've got a mission or a purpose they're supposed to be, and they feel like they're behind. A 6 line will always feel like it's behind because they're literally evolving into their highest potential, their 3rd phase of life, which doesn't happen until they're like 48 to 52. So there's a whole like process for 6 lines. I'm not going to get into that deep, but just know essentially they are an amplified 3. So if you got a 3 and a 6 in your house, just know just take out a lot of fire insurance, flood insurance, take out some parameters, and know you got a laboratory in your house that's just going to get, things are going to get broken and messy and shit's going to get real. That's how they thrive. Your line 4 is going to be all about relationships. This is the child that's going to be uber sensitive a lot of times. Your line 2 is going to be sensitive too, especially if they've got some markers in their chart. But your line 4 is going to be the one that when, especially, so Allie, you got any 4s in your, okay. When your kid, especially middle school, high school, this can be traumatic, heartbreak, friend groups that isolate them or kick, like the whole peer group. A line 4, first of all, one of the biggest things to do, your line 4 is going to be your most extroverted, gregarious. They're social butterflies, especially in their circle. They will give and give and give and give and give of themselves until they deplete themselves dry. And then they will get really bitter because nobody's pouring back into them. So there can be that energy in their friend dynamics. Also, if they have a friend that violates their trust, or they have a friend that gossips about them, or if they have a friend, that heartbreak can almost be difficult or impossible for them to recover from. And I will tell you, it takes a lot for a 4 line to cut you off. But this is the kid that will be like, they're dead to me. And I guarantee, no matter how much you prod and how much you try to convince them, oh, repair the relationship, if they get to a point that says they are done, your 4 line will not cross that line again. It takes so this also is a family dynamic that can be, if you got a situation where one kid's taking advantage of another, or like pushing boundaries, and your 4 line doesn't know how to set boundaries for themselves, they can get very easy where they're like, I'm done and you're dead to me. And that can be a really difficult bridge to repair, because it takes a lot to push a 4. But if you push a 4, especially if they've got some other markers in their chart that amplifies this, if they say you're dead to them, trust me, might as well just walk away, because they're not going to trust you again, because their need for foundations in relationship, their relationships are deep, they are intimate, and they are high trust. If that gets broken, game over. Okay. Line 5s. You're a magic being. I love line 5s, especially my 5 lines who are projectors, because you're like a projector times like 10. My line 5s, you are the visionary leaders. My line 5s are known as the heretic. The line 5s know the solution, not a solution oftentimes. And the challenge is, whether you're a projector or not, the line 5 is a projected energy, says the line 2. Both of those need to be invited in, which means a line 5, your 5 kid is going to be the kid that you're like, oh my God, nobody cares about. You're going to get to the point where you're like, stop telling everybody what to do. You're going to feel like they're the bossy one in the family, because no one's inviting them in, but they see the thing and they can't contain themselves. So they're telling everybody what they need to be doing, and everybody's getting pissed off at the 5 line. one of the best things you can do is invite them in. So if you've got a 5-liner projector child, dinner time, for example, when everybody else is lit up, especially you got a lot of generator energy, making sure you slow down to invite your 5-liner or your projector in to share will change the dynamic drastically. The other thing to really support your 5-line in is people will either make them a savior or a demon. This is the child that everybody projects their shit onto. This is the child, the 2-line feels this too, but differently. But the 5-line is the child that, because people know they have the solutions, and when you get a taste of their magic, you're like, you can fix this. They're the fixers. The challenge for the 5-line is codependency and not fixing it for people, but helping people learn how to get to their own solution. And that's really hard for a kid. They want to be helpful, especially with a parent. A 5-line can have a very codependent relationship with one or both parents, especially if they are seen as the child that they are seen as the child that can be helpful. The 6-line gets this too, but the 5-line has the solution. The 5-line is a leader. The 5-line, so oftentimes a parent can inadvertently put too much pressure on a 5-line, making them a savior. And then what happens is when that child starts to find themselves or starts to express something different, then they become demonized because they're not living into that expectation or that projection of what someone else deems or wants them to be. And so we call the 5-line, and this is something to be very cognizant if you have a 5-line in your kids. This is where the witch wound lives. This is the kids that feel like they are constantly being burned at the stake because they know too much. They see too much. They're telling everybody what to do. And when they start to stand in their truth, they don't play by other people's rules. And that makes people very uncomfortable. Your 5-line also needs to know that just walking in a room, they are without a doubt the ones that put up that projection field that like show people their potential, whether they want to see it or not. And that will make people are going to feel provoked by them regardless. Nothing is wrong with them. I have so many adults that are 5-lines. A lot of the work we do is to heal that witch wound because they have felt like something has been wrong because everybody has wanted to burn them at the stake. This is also a child that may struggle with friends because they're going to want a lot more friends than likely they may have and not understand why people don't want to be their friend because people are uncomfortable with what energy they bring that's holding them. This is a line that holds people accountable. So if they're in a group of friends where their friends are out of integrity or their friends aren't showing up, they likely aren't going to be in that friend group for very long because people don't want to see that and take responsibility. Even as kids don't want to see that and take responsibility. Is that helpful to kind of see the different dynamics in your kids? Because I'm curious, and I know, and thank you for letting me go over. I want to actually open this up since there's only a couple of you on here. Wow, I feel so seen right now. I love that. Let's talk about questions, or let's kind of heart coach this real quick on, I'm going to stop sharing here because I want to see how to bring this together with your energy and your child's, or questions or whatever, so that we can kind of coach real time scenarios around this. So you can just jump on. We don't have to do this in the chat because there's just a few of you on the call.